Dr. Morrow was filled with excitement. He hadn't been called over to the zoo in a long time. When Dr. Morrow arrived at the zoo, it was still very dark outside. He rang the doorbell of the staff door and quickly was led inside by a zoo worker. The woman's cries got louder and louder until Dr. Morrow and the zoo worker arrived at the leopard's enclosure. "Morrow!" Her eyes widened in shock. "Oh, Dr. Morrow!" she exclaimed. "You're finally here!" Morrow confusedly looked around him. "Could someone tell me what is going on?" Dr. Morrow gasped as one of the babies looked up at him. "Those aren't leopard cubs," he exclaimed. "But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories." "How is this possible?" "We have no idea. That's why we called you," Steve said. This happened on Monica's watch. Dr. Morrow quickly dialed 911. "I need law enforcement here, now." "Law enforcement?" Monica said with a tremor in her voice. "Why do they need to come?" Dr. Morrow took Monica to a private room and sat her down. Monica sighed and began to talk about the night. "I had a night shift because we knew the leopard would give birth either tonight or tomorrow night. I was only gone for 10 minutes max, I swear. But when I returned and looked at the monitor, I saw that there were 6 babies nursing. I didn't think much of it at first because the monitor doesn't have the best quality screen. But when I went to her enclosure later that night, I realized that the babies nursing weren't leopard babies. I panicked and immediately called my colleagues and later called you." Dr. Morrow sighed. This was a very complicated story to believe. Dr. Morrow told her not to worry and that he would get to the bottom of this. He left her in the room to calm down. He had to really think about his next move, as he couldn't just step into an enclosure with a leopard inside, and definitely not with a mother. Leopard who would do anything to protect her cubs. He heard the police sirens in the distance and waited for them to get closer. 2 officers stepped out and calmly walked toward Dr. Morrow. "We're here because of an urgent call," one of the officers said. "Yes, let me catch you up." Dr. Morrow explained the situation. "I know it's very confusing." Dr. Morrow guided the police officers to the leopard's enclosure and watched their faces turn pale. "I don't know how we can help you with this," one of the officers said. "I'm definitely not going in there," the other officer said confidently. Dr. Morrow had expected this, but that wasn't why he had called them. Dr. Morrow told them about a gut feeling he had. He wasn't sure of it, as he had no proof, but he was confident that he could prove it. But he needed the officers' help with that. Dr. Morrow started his day early, ready to figure out the strange case at the zoo. He saw the zoo staff talking in low voices, looking worried and confused. Dr. Morrow began by talking to the zoo staff who were there the night before. Each person he spoke to had a different story. Dr. Morrow wrote down everything they said, but it was hard to see how it all fit together. The more he heard, the less he understood. Next, Dr. Morrow checked the leopard's home. He looked everywhere for clues. As he kept investigating, Dr. Morrow noticed how the zoo staff couldn't hide their surprise. The more Dr. Morrow looked into the case, the more confusing it got. Each piece of information seemed to go against the next. The security records showed nothing strange, and the staff's stories were all over the place. Dr. Morrow knew they had to dig deeper, so he called a team to carefully check the leopard's place. He and the police officers watched as they looked for fingerprints and gathered other clues. There were faint footprints, and some leaves near the entrance looked like they had been moved. These clues made Dr. Morrow think that someone had planned this. The switched cubs were real, and it made no sense. Dr. Morrow and the team gathered around the security monitors, ready to comb through the footage for any clues. As they watched, they noticed something odd. A period during the night when the footage just went black. The screen showed normal zoo activity, and then suddenly, everything went dark. When the picture returned, everything seemed as before, but the critical time frame was missing. The blackout period in the footage raised immediate suspicions. Dr. Morrow and the officers discussed the possibility of foul play. The identity of the person behind the incident remained elusive. Who switched the cubs? How did they do it? And why? Dr. Morrow and the team were left with more questions than answers. Dr. Morrow decided it was time to talk to Monica directly. He met with her and asked her the tough questions, not holding back. Monica was quick to defend herself. She said she had nothing to do with what happened. She kept saying she loved the animals and would never do anything to harm them. Under the relentless questions and the weight of evidence, Monica finally broke down. Tears streamed down her face as she admitted to the unimaginable. Monica, through her tears, confessed to swapping the leopard cubs with otters. She wanted to draw attention to the zoo, to bring in more visitors and funding. But as she spoke, it was clear that she hadn't fully understood the consequences of her actions, both for the animals and for herself. Her plan, meant to save the zoo, had instead put its reputation and its animals in jeopardy. The guilt weighed heavily on her as she faced the reality of what she had done. With Monica's confession, Dr. Morrow immediately began planning the rescue operation. He coordinated with the zoo staff and local authorities to retrieve the real leopard cubs. Monica revealed the hidden location where she had kept the leopard cubs. Her voice trembled as she described the secluded spot, a place known only to a few within the zoo. The moment the leopard cubs were reunited with their mother was emotionally charged. The mother leopard, initially wary, soon recognized her babies, and the enclosure filled with their joyful noises. In the aftermath of the incident, the zoo took immediate steps to ensure the safety of all its animals. New security measures were implemented. Monica was taken into custody. The gravity of her actions had finally caught up with her, leading to legal repercussions. News of the bizarre incident quickly spread, turning the zoo into the center of a media frenzy. Reporters and curious onlookers crowded outside the gates, eager for any piece of information. Dr. Morrow was widely recognized for his crucial role in solving the case. Local news outlets and community groups hailed him as a hero. Following the incident, the zoo experienced a resurgence of interest and support from the local community. Schools organized trips, families visited more frequently, and volunteers signed up to help. The incident, while unfortunate, had reminded the community of the importance of the zoo and its role in conservation and education.